Welcome back to the Heritage of Hijab. In part A, we talked about how covering your head for women was practiced from very, very early in the Middle East. As early as Syria, we see it in Roman love stories. We see it on the statues of Etruscans from Anatolia, from Romans, from Byzantines, from Persians, that the world that Islam was born into, women wore the veil. They wore it to show their femininity, their chastity, their submission to God, but it was part of Christian, Jewish, Sassanid cultures that Rome was born into. And throughout the medieval period, Christian and Muslim women all covered their heads. In fact, until 1965, Christians, a huge number of Christians, covered their heads whenever they prayed. Sorry, I'm not getting this to turn again. And I don't mean just nuns. Before 1965, all Catholic girls and women covered their head when they went to church. It was only with Vatican II that law was changed. In the popular culture, it meant that for Easter, little girls, more than an Easter basket with a fuzzy bunny, would get a new hat. I remember these cute little things with plastic flowers and the little stiff thing, and it'd tie on with a ribbon around your neck. And that was the Easter present you wanted to have to wear to church. Well, in 1965, the Catholic Church tried to adapt itself to the modern world and made that rule obsolete. But nuns still do veil themselves, many in the same medieval costumes that they have used for 1,000 years, to show their submission to God and their spirituality in a physical form that covers their body in a way that the emphasis is on their good works and their spiritual life. Another group also wears veils. These are the Amish and the old Mennonite orders that you can see them in Pennsylvania, but they're all over the world. And these women, if they leave the religion, they take off their veil, but it is a sign of their commitment to their religious faith. Another group of women who wear veils are the Hasidic and conservative Jewish women. Many of them will wear these hats that you can see up in the corner that have to cover all their hair. In the Jewish religion, they believe that holiness is attained if the ceiling never sees your hair, that it's never seen outside of your house. Down below, you see many elderly women, and these are all wearing wigs. And the rule for a conservative Jewish wig is it has to be ugly enough that people can tell you're wearing a wig. And this was done in a way to adapt to the modern world, but not adapt to the modern world. You can see hair, but it's not your hair, so it doesn't count. But it was a way to be able to fit in when everyone was taking off their hats. I think it started at an opera when the people behind the ladies couldn't see the opera because the hats were so big. And so they adapted to these wigs, and you see them all over New York, Israel, and any place you have lots of conservative Jewish women. Another group of people, a demographic that wears veils, are brides. And again, it's a sign of purity and chastity along with the color white. Here's our Kate Middleton wearing a very, very long veil. So, we've talked about veils all the way around the Muslim world, but what do the veils mean to Muslim women today? This is a girl from Caltech. You know she has to be smart to be at Caltech, and she is wearing her hijab very proudly. As we get to talking about modern veils, I want to teach you the vocabulary. I've been using hijab as if it's for everything. Hijab actually means curtain, along with the Urdu purda, which means curtain, but it also means a covered woman. In many ways, when you're covered like this, you've taken the seclusion of the harem, or the harem, we would say, and it made it mobile to take it with you so you can be out on the streets without being a spectacle. These are veils worn in different areas. Um, the burqa you only see in Afghanistan wore by a Pashtun. Other women in Afghanistan would wear the one on the far side, the chador, which is what has been readapted in Iran. The hijab, which means curtain also, is actually just a headscarf or a pashmina like you would see it as today. Often a girl will wear a second covering under it because it slips easily. Um, and the niqab is where you see more in Saudi Arabia, where the Wahhabis have the most influence, and that is when you only see the eyes. These are words that you will encompass in your reading and around, and I just wanted to make you familiar with them. And whenever you get new vocabulary, it's a good chance you might have it on an exam. So the question that befuddled me when I went back to the Middle East, I was in the Middle East from 1985 to 89, and then back again in 1996. And during my absence, something amazing happened. The first time, you hardly ever saw a woman with a veil. In 4 years working in Palestine, the only woman who was young and urban wearing a veil was a girl married to a Saudi who'd come back to visit. Everyone else who was living in the cities would wear Western clothes. When you saw a woman with a veil, at that point they were all white. She was usually wearing a long coat or a Palestinian embroidery dress, and you knew that she was a farmer's wife or very old. Young, educated girls did not wear them at all. These two pictures on the slide are girls from Libya in the first group, and they're demonstrating against French colonialism. And the second film is girls training for the Egyptian army to defend their country against Israel. Note both of these. This one, you can see the girl who is covering herself completely, and girls who have a modified headscarf, much like you would have seen on Europeans in France at the same time. So there was a variety of head coverings, but for the most part, at least half of these women are not wearing veils at all. And this was true throughout the Middle East. In Jordan, I was sitting having tea with the family one time, all of them wearing veils, and the young lady very, very conservatively covered, the young women, as well as their grandmothers. But they got out the family photo album, and there was Grandma in a mini skirt. I couldn't believe it. But that was how much life changed in the Middle East. Another way you can see that is look at the Egyptian movies. Egyptian film that are in the black and white, the old ones, they never put veils on urban women. Again, a veil was a sign that a woman was a felahiyya, a girl from the countryside. It's so amazing to look at these movies now because on the streets of Egypt, the only women not wearing veils are the Christian, the Coptic women. And even those who come from the villages wear veils also. So why did covering become popular again with this generation? Why has it become even just a fashion statement, a political statement, an ethnic statement? Well, the books, and there are a pile of books on the market on this topic, will give many, many reasons. But I want to give a couple of the arguments. One is that we can set a date on when this happened. 1979. This is when the Ayatollah Khomeini came back to Iran and overthrew the Shah, who was somewhat of an American puppet, who had determined to turn Iran into a modern country. Now, I lived in India the year before this happened, and at that point, we could take a bus from Delhi to London for about $70, and Kabul and Tehran were modern, people dressed Western. I can't say they're totally modern, but they were cities where you would see girls with short skirts, short hair, walking freely in the streets. If you go back now, you think you've gone back hundreds of years in time, it seems like, because now the women are wearing the burqa, the chador, and you never see uncovered women. It's illegal to be uncovered in these countries now. What happened? Well, at 1979, there was an incredible amount of frustration in the Middle East against the West and against Russia, who were using their countries to debate the Cold War issues. Were these countries going to turn to democracy or turn to Marxism, socialism, communism? And people had hope and would fight. The Arab people, the Persian people, the Pakistani people would have hope that one of these political ideologies would solve their problems, help them to modernize and solve the economic problems of their country. But by 1979, it became obvious that these were not helping, that Nasserism from Nasser in Egypt had not brought an increase in living standards for the Egyptians, that the Ba'ath Party in Iraq had not brought equality to people. And so the Arab Muslim world was ready for a new way to try to find their way in modernity. And so that new way was Islamic fundamentalism. And so the Ayatollah Khomeini and the other leaders espoused that women had to go back to the homes or to work completely covered. And we're talking thick socks, long sleeves, long skirts, and veil coverings that covered every bit of your hair. I remember even the newest version of that, the last 3 or 4 years in Jerusalem, the first decade of this century, they would even say that having a little bit of your hair sticking out was like having your privates show, that it was so scandalous. It was so much a part of what a woman should keep covered. But not all Muslim women agree with this. Some of them wear the veil because it says, I'm not a Western girl. I'm not sexually free. I have conservative morals. I'm in submission to my family and to my religion. But this veil allows me to go out and work and to go to college, but still say without a word that I'm a girl of morals, of conservative religious morals. It can also be a spiritual statement. My next door neighbor in Palestine was a teacher in Chicago, but when she was 40, her father took her on the Hajj, and when she came home, she decided to start wearing the veil. So for her, it was a sign of spiritual maturity. Other girls, one of my friends from a village in Jordan, wanted to go to college, but her dad was very conservative and he wouldn't let her out of the house unless she was wearing a veil. So she wore it just to keep him happy. When she got to town, she did what she wanted. But it had different meanings for all these different women. Here's what I'm going to read you, a quote from a Muslim girl in Britain as she's trying to find a way to be Muslim in a Western country. She says, the Muslim world is guilty of distorting women's roles by promoting either the self-sacrificing mother or the Barbie doll thing, both of which she feels miss the essence of Islam's real emphasis, which is on gender balance and complementarity. Her own interpretation of an attractive but Islamically appropriate appearance doesn't require that the clothes come from Muslim countries, but that they have Islamic affinities to color, pattern, motif, or form. So Islamic girls are trying to find their way, trying to take the veil or not take the veil in a way that determines in a way that shows what they believe, what they feel. Some of them believe the veil shows a religious submission, and others feel that the veil covers your heart, and their religion, their spirituality, is how they treat people and their morals from the way they live. So it's very, very colorful and diverse, and you cannot put a stereotype of any one meaning on the veil. Before we leave, we need to talk about where the Islamic guidelines for veiling come from, and what exactly does the Quran say about veils. It only mentions it in two connotations. One is the Quran 33:55. It says, "O believers, do not enter the Prophet's houses." Now remember, each wife had her own room, and they lived along the edge of the mosque in Medina, and it was Grand Central Station. So many people were coming to visit the Prophet, and some people will argue this was just done to give the Prophet's wife some privacy from the hordes of people that were coming to see the Prophet. Other people say, no, this is meant for all women of all times to wear veils or to only speak to men from behind the hijab. This is, again, debated by Muslim women. The second verse, Quran 24, if you notice, the part that is important is the draw their kerchiefs over their bosoms. And so, again, some Muslims say this is just to show modesty. You cover this part of your body. Other women will argue, or other Islamic scholars, that this means to make sure that you have this covered, you need to be covered from head to toe, or at least head to ankle, to ensure modesty. Again, this is the Quranic standard for veiling. It's somewhat vague. It's very much debated. And it's very much a part of the world of late antiquity into which Islam was born. Thank you very much.